So now we've covered this before on the show, the Horn of Africa and all the problems that are happening there. And now the UN warns of escalating humanitarian crisis in Ethiopia's Tigray region. The organization said only a fraction of needed aid is being allowed into Tigray, which has been at war with the government in Addis Ababa for almost a year. So let me bring in Hermela Aragawi, who's an Ethiopian-American journalist. Now, tell us, so here, let me just show the map so people know what we're talking about. So this is called the Horn of Africa. There's Yemen, there's Saudi Arabia, right? So now here's Ethiopia. So the countries of the Horn of Africa: Ethiopia, Somalia, how do you say?
Eritrea. You had it. Eritrea.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there you go, right? And now we're talking about a little part of Ethiopia called Tigray. Mm-hmm. And now, according to this headline from Al Jazeera, the lack of help for Tigray crisis is due to skin color, says the WHO chief. And so tell me what's going on here with Tigray and Ethiopia.
First of all, anytime I see something from the head of the World Health Organization, it literally makes me nauseous. Like, because he is just so full of it, and he's getting a global mic to say these things that the majority of the Horn is saying is not true. And you've got the Voice of America printing it, the World Health Organization social media accounts printing it. What's happening in Tigray is there's an ethno-fascist terrorist group that used to run the country brutally for 27 years that is now holding that region hostage in order to try to get back into power in Ethiopia. And the U.S., actually the Horn envoy, went over there earlier this month and took pictures with the leaders of that group. So they are using those people as basically collateral to try to get back into government. Tedros Adhanom, the head of the World Health Organization, I mean, I just can't say it enough. I can't believe we live on a planet where this is, yes, this guy, he is a leading member of the Tigray People's Liberation Front. I mean, it is everywhere. It is a known fact.
So the Tigray Liberation Front, you would consider them terrorists?
Absolutely.
And this guy is a member of that group?
Absolutely.
And he's the head of the WHO.
And he's the head of the WHO.
Okay.
All those things are undisputed facts.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, it's okay. So he, instead of focusing on world health, he's been using his platform to advocate for the terrorists in Tigray, the TPLF, which have shown that they are uninterested in getting to the negotiation table to end this devastating conflict that has killed mostly people in Tigray in war. So anyone who cares about Tigray, that region where I actually have a lot of family, then they should actually be condemning him and the terrorist organization that he's involved with. But instead, on this weird earth, what we're doing is allowing this guy to get on a mic and say the reason the rest of the world doesn't care about Tigray is because of our skin color. No, you are the reason that Tigray is suffering. He is the reason. I would argue if there is any racism in this, it's that maybe the quote unquote international community would care more if his countless alleged victims and the countless alleged victims of him and his terrorist organization over the last 50 years, since they were rebel groups and then got into government and now they're a terrorist organization again. If racism is involved, it's in that the most of the international community is uninterested in the voices of his victims. It's not that they're not interested in what's going on in Tigray. They just have the story flipped conveniently. And he's been using his platform in this way repeatedly. I mean, the fact that he's using his office as this political entity itself is against practice. But the fact that he's actually flipping the story and saying that, the world doesn't care about the people because of racism is just absolutely laughable, because he doesn't care about his own quote unquote people. So why should the rest of the world care? So
let me play this video from him and then this will, because this is what his accusation is. Let's hear it.
Yes.
But in terms of humanitarian crisis, I can tell you that the humanitarian crisis in Tigray is more than Ukraine. Without any exaggeration. And I said it many months ago, maybe the reason is the color of the skin of the people in Tigray. I haven't heard in the last few months, several months now, even a head of state talking about the Tigray condition anywhere. in the developed world especially. Why? I think we know. Nowhere on earth 6 million people.
So what he's saying, just so I can explain it to the people who aren't familiar with the Horn of Africa or Ethiopia, what he's saying is that there's a crisis happening in Ethiopia, and the people who are the terrorists, he's pretending they're the victims.
Yep.
And so he's saying the only reason we don't care about these victims in Ethiopia is because of the color of their skin. And so he's completely turning the story on its head, and he's pretending like the terrorists are the victims and the victims are the terrorists. And he's on the same side of the imperialistic United States government. Now, Donald Trump was actually better for Ethiopia than Joe Biden and Barack Obama. They're the ones who want to do more imperialism, more hegemony, and more intervention inside a sovereign country in Africa against the democratic will of the people. That's what the United States and this guy. So he's the perfect head of the WHO, especially during something like a COVID crisis, because he's completely owned and operated by the West, NATO, and Big Pharma. That's who this guy is, the most corrupt criminal in the world. Right now, he's on the side of terrorists, and he's using his position as the head of a medical organization to advocate for terrorism. That's what he's doing, right?
Absolutely. And then you have to ask, why is he allowed to do this? And I believe it's because after talking to a lot of people, he is probably covered for so many powerful companies and individuals and governments. So they owe him one, right? And he owns the Tigray People's Liberation one because they helped fund his appointment into this position when he is not a medical doctor. He's the only and first non-medical doctor that is head of the WHO. He's not qualified for his position. Before he got into the position, he's been accused of so many horrible crimes in Ethiopia. He's been accused of covering 3 different cholera outbreaks. He's been accused of running programs that sterilized women in the Amhara region. He was a part of the TPLF when they were just firing off bullets at protesters that were protesting their rigged elections. There was so much torture that was happening under that regime that he was leading. So all those things, Ethiopia has asked the United Nations to investigate. What have they done? Absolutely nothing. And instead, they've given him this mic to just talk this basic nonsense that the majority of the Horn knows is not true. And I think he's saying, we believe, the people of the Horn, a lot of people believe the TPLF's on its way out. It's just a matter of time. The only concern is how many more people in the Tigray region are going to get hurt before they absolutely disappear. And so the translation of what he's saying here is, what's going on? We've been devoted to your cause here, United States and the global community. You gotta, are you guys abandoned? It's like, this is a last ditch, desperate effort to try to garner support for the TPLF. And the fact that he's connecting it to Ukraine, this has nothing to do with the Ukraine and Russia issue. It doesn't even reflect it at all. And I think he's just trying to weaponize race here, but nobody's buying it. Nobody that doesn't just want to buy it is buying it, not as it relates to the Horn.
What's he a doctor of?
What is he a doctor? Is he not a doctor at all?
Community health or something. He's not okay. There's allegations that his PhD is also not real, but I don't have evidence one way or the other. But I believe his doctorate is in community health or something like that.
So he's not a medical doctor. He has a PhD in kind of administering something. Right.
Absolutely. And I believe when he became appointed Ethiopian health minister, I believe it might have been the mid 2000s, he had a biology degree. He did not qualify for that job. And then he didn't qualify for this one either.
Okay. Hermela Aragawi, I appreciate you taking time to explain to us what our imperialism looks like in Africa and the Horn of Africa. I appreciate you taking time. Where can people find you?
You can find me on youtube.com/Hermela TV and on every other social media platform at Hermela TV. And we really appreciate you, Jimmy, actually really focusing a lot on Africa, because I think your audience is, some of them are following me to YouTube, to my YouTube channel, and they're getting more interested in Africa, and it is so huge for the more than billion people on the African continent that often feel like their voices are left out of what you call Western or corporate media.
Well, they certainly have been. And I've been encouraged by, Africa's pushback against Ukraine, or not their unwillingness to participate in the propaganda campaign of the United States. And also this story of where they're now getting closer with China and Russia, and they're not falling for the NATO propaganda. And also, they didn't fall for the COVID narrative, right? So they predicted all this death in Africa from COVID, and it didn't happen.
This is probably the first time I can think of historically that they experimented with this stuff on white people first.
Yeah, isn't that something?
Because Africa refused it.
Because Africa refused so that was very interesting.
They were trying to send some vaccines over there first. It's
they wouldn't take it. They had to give it right to Americans. That's like one of the first times ever.
I know. It's amazing. They had to throw out 30 million vials of Moderna's vaccine. Nobody wants to take it anymore. So anyway, Hermela, thank you so much. And everybody check her out at Hermela TV. Hey, we're coming to Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Detroit, Los Angeles, Spokane, Tacoma, Denver. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all our tickets for all our live shows. See you there.